Welcome to the Westside Investors Network, WIN, your community of investing knowledge for growth. This is the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast for real estate professionals by real estate professionals. This show is focused on the next step in your career, investing. Thank you for listening. And please, if you like our content, rate us on your podcast provider. Just a quick disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are for educational purposes only and should not be construed as an offer to buy or sell any shares or securities, make or consider any investments, or take any other action.
Welcome back to another episode of the Deal Deep Dive segment on the Westside Investors Network podcast. I'm your host, Trent Werner. In this segment, our featured guests will share their unique stories on a specific deal they've invested in. We will dive deep into finding the deal, financing the deal, writing an offer, and the due diligence. Do us a solid and smash that subscribe button, leave us a rating, and share this episode. And now, let's dive deep. Welcome back to the Westside Investors Network podcast. I'm your host, Trent Werner. On today's episode, we are joined by Whitney Elkins-Hutten. Whitney is the Director of Investor Education at PassiveInvesting.com. Whitney's going to share some questions that you should be asking operators as a limited partner investor when you're interviewing them and potentially investing in one of their deals. Whitney's also going to go over some different asset types and investment strategies to help you diversify and reduce your risk in your portfolio. Whitney is also going to share about her book, Money for Tomorrow, and some of the helpful tools that she's included in that book for you to help improve your investing career. Now let's welcome Whitney Elkins-Hutten. All right, Whitney Elkins-Hutten joining the Westside Investors Network podcast today. Whitney, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Thank you so much for having me on, Trent.
So Whitney, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are the Director of Investor Education at PassiveInvesting.com, correct?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
I was going to say that's usually the second question. My role here at PassiveInvesting.com as the Director of Investor Education means I get the fun job of helping an investor invest in a private equity deal without having to sell them the investment. So essentially, I'm kind of like a coach and a mentor. I meet the investor where they're at. I help understand their goals, their risks, their timeline. Help educate them how our investments at PassiveInvesting.com help them reach those goals, risks, and timeline. And then, then I can, kind of match them up to a particular deal. And then, the investor relations team can work through the details of that deal with them.
And I guess in a short and sweet way, how does a typical conversation with an investor look for you?
Yeah, well, honestly, the conversation that I have should look like, a conversation that you should be having with any operator, because they should be coming from a fiduciary, position, right? Like when you're hop on a phone with an operator as a passive investor, you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you, right? You should be understanding what, who they are as a business, what's the background, track record, their expertise, all those things that make passive investing so wonderful for you in your portfolio. But they should be asking questions to understand who you are as an investor. What are their goals? What do you need from your portfolio? Do you need cash flow, capital preservation, equity growth, diversification, tax benefits? Those are the kind of the big five. Those are the big wealth pillars, right? I, as an operator, want to know what that person really needs. Not so much spend 15 minutes with them and say, hey, here's our menu of investments you want to invest. I want to get to know them a little bit more, understand, and really wholly understand that we're a good fit for each other. Because especially when you go into an equity deal, Trent, you're making money together and possibly writing out a very challenging environment together. And so I think that's the relationship sometimes limited partners don't quite understand when they're investing in passive deals, that they actually are more often than not, they're on the equity side of things, which means they're on the partnership. You're going to make money or lose money together. And unlike the stock market, which is super efficient and you can get in and out, but it's super hard to make money, getting into an equity deal, getting into an alternative investment, getting into real estate, there's a longer glide path to making money, but that's where the opportunity lies. But it also is less liquid. And so, yeah, when you ask what does a conversation look like, it should be a two-way street, not just the LP asking their list of questions that they maybe downloaded off of a form or, offline. Hopefully you're working with a mentor or a coach on this, but really the operator understanding who you are and making sure that they're bringing you into an investment because it is holistically a good fit for you.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I think from a passive investor LP side, a lot of people may, especially newer limited partner investors, they want to diversify from the stock market or their other investments. And so they find a real estate operator that they can invest with, and they don't necessarily understand maybe even what they're looking for, whether it's capital preservation, equity growth, cash flow, all those different things. And so I think that's great that you hit all of those on the head with, as a limited partner, you have to be asking the right questions of your operator and making sure it's a good fit. And I think identifying what you're looking for out of the investment, because not all real estate investments or business investments are going to be the same for you as a limited partner investor.
Yeah, I think one of my red flags when I'm talking to a limited partner is maybe a more skilled investor. It doesn't necessarily, maybe they're more skilled at private equity investing, but they come in and they're like, I've been investing for 15, 20 years. Just tell me what the returns are. I'm like, okay, my first question is, have you invested in the space before? 9 times out of 10, they haven't. And I'm like, okay, this is a very different game, right? Because you can't just invest in the stock market. The stock starts ticking down. You have your stop loss, mechanism in place and immediately sells. This is investing in a partnership. It's investing in people. It's an investing in a relationship. Let's get to know each other first, right? We're gonna be married in an investment for 5 to 7 years. Whether, it goes well or not well, let's get to know each other first.
Absolutely. And so at passiveinvesting.com, you mentioned that you have different types of investment vehicles that you guys operate. What are some of those different investment or asset classes that you invest in?
Yeah, so we really have tried to, create a menu of offerings that hit different layers of the capital stack. That way, when an investor comes into our ecosystem, they truly can diversify their portfolio over all the different layers of the capital stack and also markets and also asset classes. So they can create true diversification. So one of my favorite vehicles right now in this market environment is the debt layer, right? We have a residential real estate debt fund. We call it the PIC debt fund, real estate debt fund, and that invests in fix and flip loans. It's in first lien position. We have done several promissory notes, which that's moving up the capital stack. You're not in first position, but now you're in second position, but still debt. We're imminently opening a promissory note fund for multifamily primarily. And then we move up our capital stack and we get into our equity deals. And so we do multifamily equity deals. And primarily in the southeastern part of the United States, we focus on Class A assets. Our sweet spot is buying from developers and completing the lease up on a project and then just holding it for 5, 7, ish years. And then we also will do self-storage deals, similar model. We love buying in the Southeast. We love focusing on that, A plus asset. Not so much doing straight value add, but we look for opportunities that have expansion opportunities to them, like maybe additional land that we can build additional units on. And then we also have our cash flowing businesses. And one of the businesses that are open to our investors is investing in express car washes. And so that's a unique opportunity to own the cash flowing business as well as the real estate together. And so you're going to hold that investment by, depending on when you enter the fund, 5, 7, 10 years. And then, the asset's going to kick off cash flow during the hold time. And then when we exit, our first goal to exit is going to be doing an IPO. And then, possibly doing a roll-up sale to a REIT. But there's going to be a nice back-end kicker for our investors because we actually hold the land. And that provides equity growth as well.
Very nice.
That's a lot to dive into there, guys. That was a lot. Somebody's like scribbling and taking notes. I'm going to give you one place. Go to passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. There, you can get on a one-on-one call with me. We can talk about all these different things. You can also see our open deals. So you don't have to take a ton of notes.
Yeah. And you can always skip back 10, 15, 30 seconds when you're listening to this if you do absolutely want to take notes. But yeah, visit passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com and you can absolutely schedule a call with Whitney and she can dive into dive into it deeper. Whitney, I have a question for you because we're in a tough market right now. It's not as roses and rainbows as it was a few years ago, where people seem to be making money hand over fist. And now operators are having to actually work for it. I think the operators that are still doing well in this market are the ones that I guess maybe focus more on their operations and their efficiencies. If a limited partner investor is nervy or apprehensive right now on investing in multifamily class A, for example, what would you tell them? Is now still a good time to invest in multifamily that's class A, maybe not value add, where you're really focused on the longer term hold? Or would you maybe talk to them about an alternative investment that you just mentioned?
Yeah, so this is where I love having conversations with people because we need to understand where are we in the market cycle. And you're going to have your local market cycle and then you're going to have the larger national market cycle. Regardless of what you think or what political, affiliation you are, all the red light indicators are flashing are recession. Okay. But it takes time for for people to actually say that word, about 6 months. So I would argue we're there. But what happens before a recessionary environment? We have hypersupply. So in the Southeast, in certain Western state markets, up in the Northeast as well, we've seen a huge amount of building and growth. There's tons of hypersupply in the multifamily arena, self-storage arena too. In some markets, even express car washes, right? We've adjusted our market strategy there. So in the market cycle, we have to absorb the hypersupply, then we come into kind of the trough, the recessionary, and then we start moving through growth. You can invest in equity deals in the trough of that cycle, the recessionary part, but they have to have an extreme upside advantage. Okay, meaning things like tax abatement strategies work really well because you're eliminating one of your largest tax bill. Extreme value add, if you're okay taking that risk, but there is an investment that the market is giving you in this trough, and that is debt. Because when you head into this hypersupply, into the recessionary trough, banks get scared. They flee to the sidelines. So all that liquidity gets sucked out of the market. And so this is an amazing opportunity for investors to step in and fill that gap and get paid. They don't have to compete against the banks anymore because the banks are sitting on the sideline. They tucked tail and ran. Okay, they're the first to get out and the last to get back in. So there's this amazing opportunity here for investors to get into lending, be it fix and flip lending. I argue fix and flip lending works in any market cycle because you're investing in a value add strategy. The actual, you're backing a value add deal, but you also have your promissory notes, right? There are going to be operators that have great assets that are going to recover, that are performing in today's market. They're cash flowing, but maybe they need an equity injection to make it to the other side whenever banks can, interest rates nudge down a little bit more and they can refinance. So that is those two investments, the debt investments, are going to be huge to add to somebody's portfolio. Now, there might be a listener here and they might be going, wait, Whitney, I'm not in this to earn like a 6 to 10% return or even a 6 to 12% return. I'm in this for the 20, 30% IRR. Show me the money. Where is that? Well, you probably got beat up the last 2 years if you had all of your deals in the equity space because they all were exposed to the interest rate environment. So this is a unique opportunity too for investors to diversify their portfolio across the capital stack because it's not a matter of if another recession will happen, it's just a matter of when. And so I equate this, for my listeners that are super versed in the stock market. We used to say, 60 to 70% stocks, 30 to 40% bonds, right? They were uncorrelated. When stocks were on a tear, bonds were underperforming. But when stocks were underperforming, the bonds would go on a tear. That has been disproven. Those things are actually correlated now. But when we have the different layers of the capital stack, right, we have a, real estate, and for all intents and purposes, is still very highly inefficient. So those layers will remain separated for quite some time. So this is a unique opportunity to add those cash flowing layers to your portfolio, stabilize your portfolio, and you earn a return right now, because sitting on the sideline for another year or two, waiting for an amazing equity deal, that it could have been a year or two that you could have been putting your money to use, earning 6 to 12% return, right? When we talk about compounding interest being, most amazing thing since sliced bread, part of that is because there's a time factor involved.
So if an LP or an investor in general is one of those people that you mentioned that maybe got punched in the mouth a little bit over the last few years, and they're listening to what you just said, what would you say if hey, I'm down to, I have $100,000 that I'm comfortable investing right now because I'm a little skittish after the last few years. Would you recommend breaking that $100,000 up, or is there one of these positions in the capital stack right now to get involved in if you can only choose one?
Well, yeah, well, that's a loaded question. But before that, I was going to say, you must be a Mike Tyson fan, right? Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. So that's so very true for the past couple of years. I've taken my fair share of punches as a limited partner investor. It's not, when you're in an equity deal, it's, especially if you've been investing for, any period of time, like I would say longer than 10 years, that not all equity deals are going to 100% perform, right? You hope you have more winners than you do ones that break even, and you hope you have more that break even and that are winners than you do that are losers. So it's all about not putting too much capital into any one deal that it could sink you.
Hmm.
And I've seen investors violate that immutable law of passive investing over and over and over again, right? They have $100,000 in cash. They take it from their home equity line of credit because nothing has ever gone wrong in investing. And they invested it. And then, now their deal has a capital call, right? Or they took their, child's wedding money and invested it, right? So, we still want to keep what we call this is a concept that I cover in my book, Money for Tomorrow. We want to build our financial moat, right? We want to have that firm financial foundation. Then we want to seal all the leaks in that foundation. Then let's add the investments on top of that foundation, right? Let's prepare for the rainy day first. That way, when we know the rainy day is going to come, but we don't know if it's going to be like 1 hour or like a 40-year flood.
Right.
Okay. So now back to your question. I have $100,000. The loaded part of that question is you gave me 2 options and then you took it away and you only gave me 1 option. So a little hard there. For somebody who's been sitting on the sidelines, let's get the money working. That's why I like the first tier, like a residential real estate debt fund, something simple, easy. It gives you monthly, cash flow. At least our PIC debt fund will. It'll give you monthly cash flow. If you don't need the cash flow, you can allow it to compound so you can take advantage of that. By the way, you take $100,000 and let it compound for 10 years, you could have a 17% annualized return. So you can get equity-like returns in debt space. You just have to allow time to work for you. Now, and that's if you need liquidity or you're kind of skittish and you just, you want to reprove to yourself that passive investing still works. I can bring home the bacon with this. I can support my dreams. I can support my lifestyle with this. Now, for somebody who needs a higher level of return or is willing to take on a little bit more risk, you think about taking on the second layer there, the promissory note layer, because there you're going to earn for $100,000, you're not going to earn not just 8% preferred return, you're going to earn 10 to 12% preferred return. But generally, those promissory note layers don't return all of that 10 to 12% interest in monthly or quarterly or annual cash flow. You have to hold the note until maturity. So it's got to be delayed gratification. You got to be one of those kindergartners that's not going to that you got 2 marshmallows sitting in front of you and you get a third if you don't eat the first one, right? You got to be willing to hang on, for that time. So for me, I mean, if you have retirement fund money that you aren't going to access for like the next 5 to 10 years, I think promissory notes make a perfect complement to a retirement account. Now, if you have cash that you don't need, that $100,000 is actually sitting in cash and you don't need the cash flow from it, you don't need the liquidity of it, promissory notes can be, you should take a look at it and make sure that it meets your goals, your risk and timeline.
And now here's a word from our sponsor.
Get things done while you're on the move. Learn more about working with a virtual assistant through Offsite Professionals. It's a great way to get all the things done that you need to get done. Have freedom in your time and streamline your life by automating your business. Stop spending time on the tasks that you can delegate and start spending more time on your superpower. Call us today at 503-446-3177 or visit our website at offsiteprofessionals.com.
Uptown Syndication is now offering a syndication coaching program for you to take your real estate portfolio to the next level. This is your opportunity to have experienced syndicators, AJ and Chris Shepard, coach you on your way to controlling your real estate investing future. Our coaching program will provide you with the tools and framework needed to begin syndicating real estate in your target market. Go to uptownsyndication.com today to learn more. That's kind of what I was hoping you were going to respond. I think what the quote is.
Did I pass the test there?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, check. You're good. What's the quote? It's time in the market, not timing the market, right? And I think, at least me personally, I trade stocks too in my, in some free time. And there's a emotional aspect to any type of investing that when you struggle, whether it's for one day or for, extended period of time, you start doubting yourself, second guessing yourself. And I mean, what you just said, Whitney, is you don't have to go try to hit a home run again. You can take some lower risk investment strategies and you don't have to, you don't have to leverage a HELOC to do it. Be smart about it, but just get your money working again, which is, I think, more difficult than a lot of people realize if you haven't been punched in the mouth during your investing career.
Here's a way to think about it. And for people that are visual learners, go any compound interest calculator, right? You can take any one, but for the irs.gov/compound interest calculator, I think it's still up and working. I don't know. I haven't checked it in the past couple of days, guys. But I think, it's an automated tool. It should be. I say that in jest. But long story short, put in $100,000 into there. Plug it in at, 8%. And let's just say you just made one investment and allow it to compound for 10 years. You would be amazed. That would be over 200 and you've more than doubled your investment. But now, you can add to it, right? With our dad fund, you can add to it in increments of $1,000. So maybe you can sock away $500 a month. Look at how the growth on that. Then change the number from 8 to 3.4. Because if your money's sitting in the bank, that's about what it's making right now. We're recording this in February of 2025. It's, most high interest savings accounts are around 3.4 money markets. Okay. You'll see, it's not that what you make is cut in half because you took away compounding. You're probably earning a fourth of what you could be making in just the next step up of, I don't call anything guaranteed. But the next step up, you take just that next step in the risk layer from getting it from the bank into a low risk debt fund. And that's how, just taking one step, that's how people build real wealth. Do that for 6 months or a year. Reprove to yourself that this works. Then take the next step. Right. So it doesn't have to be an all-in-one. I mean, I was the director of investor relations at a private equity firm, in 2017, 18, and 19. And I had people that had never invested in the stock market before placing $400,000 on resident, multifamily value add deals. I mean, that's a huge leap in the risk continuum.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you need just an entryway, right?
Yeah.
Let's just go one little step.
Well, apparently you had some people that were pretty risk tolerant back when you were doing that.
I just don't think they understood the risk. I honestly, like, if you've ever read the book Morgan Housel's, oh my gosh, I'm like blanking on it. We need to Google that and put it in the notes, but it's The Psychology of Money. I think that's the title of it. And he has the second book out since then. But the whole psychology, I mean, he goes through a whole chapter around like studies of just the people looking at a deck that offers a 20% IRR return versus a deck that offers a 10% IRR return. It could be the same asset, same business plan, technically the same asset, but just like in the study, the metrics were, changed. I mean, people's brains, they were just like, oh, this is more valuable. I'm going to go do this. Like it was like a drug, like it hit all the dopamine receptors in the brain. So it's such an interesting case study, I think, for investors. I mean, hopefully somebody's doing some research right now. But yeah, I mean, people get attracted to the numbers and they are willing to just throw risk to the wind. And that's actually where we need to start is, understanding what's your investor roadmap, your profile, and what is your goals. What do you need from your portfolio? Because you might be asking me like, hey, Whitney, what would you invest in? I may have different goals than you do. And so anything that comes out of my mouth, if you take that and run with it, you're going to wake up 3 years later and go, she doesn't know anything. And it's because I have an entirely different direction that I'm going with my portfolio scale. Right. So there's a lot to unpack there for sure.
So it sounds like what you recommend is, well, first of all, identify what your goals are and where you want to, what your roadmap looks like. But the first step is not what returns I want to hit. It's what's my risk tolerance? What's my risk profile and how much, or how do I need to break this down in my overall portfolio in terms of, percentages on riskier versus less risky, right?
We call this business alignment. So think of your portfolio. This isn't just like, I have $1 million. Let's go like figure out how to invest it. This is like, I have $1 million. What do I need this $1 million to do? I might need it to do a few different things for me. I might be like, I can't lose any of this, or maybe I can play around a little bit in stocks. So I can maybe take $100,000 hit. Okay. Well, now we know $900,000 of it needs to be in investments that have a hard asset backing it. Okay. Then the next question is, what are my risk tolerance? Like, I have people ask this question, what will keep you up at night? I think most of us as investors are like the fraudsters, the Ponzi schemers, all that's going to keep me up at night. But then I have some people that are like, if I don't get that monthly check, I'm going to sweat. Like I need that monthly check coming in. Okay, well, great. So now we know that we're probably going to be looking more at the debt side of the investment. So you get paid first. Okay. And then we're going to look at the timeline. Okay. And this is where it gets really fun because then we can allocate certain parts of the portfolio. And I'm not a financial advisor, guys. I'm just giving you like things that I figured out as an investor. But then you might want to allocate certain parts of your portfolio to long-term growth that is just stable cash flow, right? Maybe 250,000 of it. I don't know, whatever that breaks out to you. And then another 500,000 is into your equity growth of your portfolio. And then maybe the last quarter is like, those are your flyers, right? Maybe you have 20 years, okay? That portfolio will look very different than somebody who is 3 years away from retirement and all they have is $1 million. And they're like, Whitney, I'm going to retire in 3 years. I need $100,000 coming in monthly on cash flow. Great. I know where I'm going to put them. I'm going to put them in the debt tiers. It's going to kick off monthly cash flow. Now, what they do with that cash flow, they could continue to reinvest some of that back into their plan and continue to grow their equity. But that's going to be very different. We're not going to, I might discourage them a little bit from taking on like super risky equity deals, or, there's been some horrible stories in the news lately about like, investments that we thought were super sound, like ATM fund investment, and they turned out not to be. They turned out to be Ponzi schemes. So we're going to, get with great operators. We're going to invest in those sound deals.
Definitely do your due diligence when you're investing, especially if they are funds that you absolutely cannot lose. Get with the right people, please.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people over optimize their portfolio. I think we mentioned this at the beginning. They're like, oh, I've got debt equity in my house. Let me take out a HELOC and let me invest that. I do that too. But I put that into investments that I can liquidate,
Yeah.
that produces cash flow that covers that bill, and that at any point in time I can get out of, like if I sense something is off.
Right. So Whitney, I do want to talk about money for tomorrow. What's the reason someone should buy your book and read it?
Yeah, so I actually wrote the book it was a series of notes from my daughter, as I was scaling our portfolio, just down to like, what are the basics? Like, how does money work? What are those skills that you need to execute on every single day, every single month in order to create your wealth? And then what are those things that you need to have in order to keep it, right? I think people that get into investing, whether it's in the stock market or, passive investing, they get addicted to the growth side of things, and they forget that we got to go back to basics a lot in order to create and keep our wealth. And so I put this primer all together for her, and then we turned it into a book. And so it's really for somebody who's just starting off their wealth journey. Maybe you have a teen or a kid in college. This is a great book for them to start kind of clean and have a blueprint to scale their wealth, looking forward. Okay. They're not going to step on the big landmines that you and I might have done. But even for my more seasoned investor, I have a lot of people that have read that book and they go, oh, snap, I don't automate like the tracking of my income and expenses. And that was the puzzle piece for me to find the extra dollars to be able to combine that with my tax savings to be able to go into my next investment. It's amazing how a lot of people skip just kind of the basics. I coach kids soccer. And so what do we do? Like, with any sport, you warm up, you run around the field, you pass the ball, you shoot on goal. Then you get to do the cool like strategy and learn the bicycle kick, all those like cool things.
Yeah. Which I like how you mentioned you have seasoned investors that maybe get a reminder on some of the things that they've either forgot about or have gotten away from throughout their investing career, because I'm guilty of it personally. There are times where I like to see the growth and want to keep doubling down, but every now and then I gotta remind myself, hey, let's stay within ourselves, and we're looking for a single here. We don't need to get it all back in one swing,
Well, it's really interesting because a lot of times, like my more seasoned investors, they look at that, they look at like, I don't need to track my income and expenses, and I'm like, but do you have a business? Or real estate holdings? Yeah. I'm like, do you track your income and expenses there? Oh, absolutely. To a T. I know exactly how much I'm bringing in there. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you do that for your personal life? I had one coaching client. They were an accountant. They are an accountant. Long story short, they were like, I know I have $15,000 to $20,000 a month to invest. I just don't know where it is. Like I get to the end of the month, it's poof, it's gone. I'm like, well, what do you do for your clients? How do you track your business expenses? I have everything's in QuickBooks. I'm like, okay, cool. Do you have that set up for your personal? Do you have a chart of accounts set up for your personal life? And they were like, no. And I was like, well, let's do that first. And then they figured out that they actually didn't have the 15 to 20 a month initially because they were just spending, just writing checks left and right. But once we aligned their spending, right? I don't ever want to call it budgeting. I don't want to, I take people through a process to align their spending to what they truly want to get out of life. Once we did that, we found more than $15,000. We found closer to 20. And now they are taking that 20. This is monthly savings. Okay. That's $240 a year that they're now putting into their investment plan. You put that in a compound calculator at 8% for like 10 years. That's huge. That's millions of dollars just by finding that monthly savings.
Whitney, is there anything else about this? I think I'm gonna go buy it as soon as we get off this conversation. So, because again, I think now is a good time for me to get a reminder for myself in my investing career. But is there anything else about this book that you want to touch on?
Yeah. So, another thing for the more seasoned investor, again, we go through, how do we invest on principle and strategy, not based on tactic? We don't get in the conversation. Are we doing opportunity zone investments? How do we optimize till the cows come home for taxes? We're going back to the basics and understanding when you look at an asset, what are the 7 pillars of wealth, those 7 levers it can pull to earn you money? And you would be shocked when you go through your portfolio that most of your assets might only pull like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 levers. Okay, so we're missing out on a huge opportunity there. And then for people that are getting close to retirement or, heaven forbid, end of life, I walk people through a process to not only get your legal house in order, like your estate plan in order. I'm not a lawyer, but we go through a lot of the different things that I learned in settling 5 different estates. But how do we actually set up those systems to train our executor, to train our heirs, to make sure that we keep our families out of court, keep them from squabbling with each other, and that money actually make it into their hands?
That's all great stuff, Whitney. Is there any place that people can hear more from you or connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find the book Money for Tomorrow on biggerpockets.com, or you can find it on amazon.com. And if you want to get in touch with me directly, if you're ready to pick an investment, you can find me at passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. If you're like, wow, I need some serious help getting my financial house in order, you can find me at ashwealth.com, ashwealth.com.
Very nice. Whitney, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Trent.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Real Estate Professionals Investing Podcast on Win, your community of investing knowledge for growth. We hope that this episode has increased your knowledge and added value to your path to freedom. If you would, please take a second to rate us so that we can get more great investors to interview. If you or someone that you know wants to be on, please visit westsideinvestors.com and fill out our form to be on the show. Thank you again and enjoy your day.